YouTube, Tired Metalhead Weatherman here. I hope you guys are having a good Sunday. Well, seems like we're back in action over here finally. My software was acting up recently. It looks like I fixed the problem temporarily. We'll be looking to upgrade in due time. Well, meantime, there have been a few new developments in the tropics. We will have a Labor Day forecast coming up, but I think that'll be later tonight, just to get a little further along into the models and maybe have a little bit more increased certainty. I don't expect much to happen, but you know, I just try to keep my information as up to date as possible and as accurate as possible. That being said, let's go ahead and get right into it here. We're going to talk about the tropics today. We have Danielle here that is regained its hurricane status for right now. Tropical. We still have tropical storm Earl maintaining at 50 miles an hour, 45 knots. Pressure has dropped a little bit. We're sitting at 999 millibars, so I do see some strengthening continuing. And then we have yet another player right here, coming off of the West African coast. As of right now, very low chance of development over the next few days, but once it gets further out here, we'll have to watch it a little bit more intensely. That being said, let's go ahead and take a look at all the spaghetti models here. We're mainly going to, of course, cover the named storms first, and we'll start with Hurricane Danielle since it's the stronger of the two. And actually seems to be more of a threat than land. Alright, we're just waiting for that to load. So basically, this statement pretty much sums it up entirely. Danielle is just meandering over the central Atlantic, which it's been doing over the last few days, and it's had a chance to really sit over that warm water and light sheer environment and really start to prosper here. So as of right now, we're sitting at a minimal hurricane with 75-mile-per-hour winds. The maximum wind speed that we are expecting from this is about 90 miles an hour, just short of maybe a Category 2 hurricane, but it's a pretty high in Category 1. So if we look at the spaghetti models here, the tracks have it making some relatively close passes to the UK and maybe even France. By that point, it's probably going to be a non-tropical entity. It's quite a tongue twister there, jeez. But anyway, deviating. But yeah, this is expected to become a non-tropical entity by the time it gets close to the English Channel. If it even goes there, there's still a lot of model disagreement, and this is so far out because the storm has been moving extremely slow. In fact, if I remember correctly, I thought I saw the speed that it was moving at. But anyway, take a look at it right now. You can see that it has gone through its eye wall replacement cycle, and I'm expecting it to strengthen further throughout the day. It's a very well formed, very symmetrical looking storm, by the way. You can see those feeder bands starting to breathe out a little bit further from the center, which is always a telltale sign of strengthening and an increasingly organized storm. Alright, so now we're going to look at the official track from from NOAA here, and this basically just goes from Sunday to Friday. This maintains hurricane strength up until about Wednesday morning, and then somewhere between Wednesday and Thursday morning local time, I think this is when we start to lose a lot of strength here. Then by Friday, this is becoming a post-tropical system by 2 a.m. Friday Atlantic Standard Time. So no watches or warnings to talk about here, simply due to the fact that we're still so far out to sea. The closest piece of land is right here. I think this is the Azores? I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on it. But you can clearly see that it is well away from there, and the storm is very small. So I'm not expecting a lot of impacts to be felt here. Alright, so we'll take a quick look at the spaghetti models, and then we will move on to Earl. Okay. If this thing will load here we go. So before we had a couple of okay, I don't know why my screen did that, but Before we had a couple of models kind of pushing it towards Cat 2, Cat 3, but or wait, that might have been Earl that I was looking at yesterday where I saw it being pushed towards that. But over here, model agreement's been pretty consistent. After about 120 hours, about 108 to 120 hours, we really lose the intensity here with this storm. And slowly but surely, we start to go down to tropical storm, and then eventually even a couple of these are going out a little further, saying tropical depression. Makes sense. Time will only tell, but I'm pretty confident that that's what we're gonna have. That's just what we're gonna have here. We still have quite a few of these that are kind of showing a bit of potential for maybe the UK, not Iceland, but the United Kingdom maybe getting a piece of this, or England. There's one model that's kind of off here. There's a few models here on this graph that even have it showing a system heading towards France. What kind of intensity it will be at, hard to say. Alright. So now, that being said, let's get over to Tropical Storm Earl. Okay. So, with Earl is passing north of the Virgin Islands right now. There are some impacts that are possible, mainly some heavy rain towards Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and maybe the northern Leeward Islands through the night. But basically, we're maintaining at 50 miles an hour. Not much has changed since yesterday. Some slight strengthening. There has been a pressure drop, albeit a slight one. But if we look on the, if we start to look at the satellite imagery here, you can kind of see this thing looking like it's starting to strengthen a little further. So I think this next update, I wouldn't be surprised to see a bump up on the wind speed for sure. We're still struggling a little bit with some dry air and wind shear, but I think it's starting to become a little less prevalent, and we're getting into maybe a little bit more of a favorable environment. We weren't expecting this thing to strengthen fast, so this doesn't surprise me in the slightest, but it's almost like it's got its own little heartbeat here with how these storms are developing. Like, it'll shrink up and then it'll come back around whenever it gets more convection available, but you can see over the last couple of frames how the tops of those thunderstorms are really starting to expand outward. So this storm is beginning to breathe just a little bit better. Alright, now that being said, we can look at the spaghetti models. We're expecting Earl to make its turn today. So it'll be kicking out to sea. It's going to stay pretty well east of Bermuda, so that's good news. And then we're kind of looking at it maybe going over to the same area that Danielle is in right now. So we'll look at the forecast cone here. This thing isn't expected to make hurricane status until Thursday, early Thursday morning AST. And then we'll have to watch and see where it goes from there. As of right now, Bermuda, you aren't necessarily outside of the potential cone. It's going to be a close pass in the absolute worst case scenario. I do think if we're going to be leaning to it, kind of shifting more right around here, I would say. But even then, the only thing you're going to get is maybe some increased swell and some rip currents. But beyond that, it's not a lot to worry about for you guys there. We'll look at the spaghetti models for Earl, and then we'll take a look at what we have going on over towards the West African coast. So we already have gone over the track, and this is the one where I've been seeing some a little bit of bullish runs here as far as the intensity. In fact, it's kind of gotten a little worse. We have a few. Well, actually, this is a little bit of an interesting development here. We have a few of these that are kind of pushing it more and more towards Category 2. So there's a little bit more of increased confidence there. And it makes sense when you think about it, because over towards the central Atlantic, wind shear is a little bit lighter, and the waters are pretty warm. Not as warm as the Caribbean, but the wind shear is stopping this thing from forming. But it wouldn't be outlandish. I would say that it's not outlandish to become Category 2. I think once we get these models that are going towards 3 and up, I'm kind of like, okay, let's pump the brakes here a little bit. Because the further north we go, the waters are obviously going to get colder, thus leading to a slower strengthening and potentially weakening storm, if anything. But we're going to be looking at Earl hanging around here for a bit. I'm pretty confident, though, at this point that we're going to have our second hurricane of the year. Thankfully, though, it looks like this storm will not be a major threat to land, if at all. So, as you can clearly see, all of our models have this thing pretty much going out to sea. Great news for anyone. Unless you are a fisherman that's out in the Atlantic, then might be a bit of a problem. So, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and take a look at the Atlantic Basin and see just what else might be lurking out here real quick. It's probably going to be the fastest tropical update video I've done in a minute, even though it's probably still going to lean to about 15 minutes. So, roll this along real quick. So, here is Danielle. We're going to be watching Earl roll off here. And here's our next tropical wave here. Does form into a decent size low, but I don't think it really develops into much anything. Of course, plenty of other pieces of energy flying around. I'll have to watch that real close. And then, of course, we're going to have to watch over towards the Caribbean towards the middle of the month. I've been seeing a lot of runs that have been showing low pressures kind of hanging off of the northern parts of the South American continent. We'll have to watch and see what those decide to do. So there's a little bit of energy flying rampant out of there. Of course, we still have our West African coast, but nothing right now is standing out to me as a major feature at the moment. We may actually go ahead and look at the Caribbean as well. Oops, I've hit the wrong thing. We'll go ahead and look at the Euro real quick before we do that, though. Now, this Euro model is going towards something a little... Oh dear. Oh, it just started. Wow. Okay, then I guess we're going to go back to the OOZ. Wait, what? What's going on here? Oh, wow. What is going on? What in the world? Okay, I guess we're not using the Euro today. Guess we're having problems with tropical tidbits here. The downside to not making these videos, or the downside to me making videos as quick as I get model updates, sometimes you have these unforeseen problems. So, it is what it is, I guess. I guess we'll go to the Western Atlantic and look at the GEFS. A little embarrassing right there, apologize, but hey, that lets you know how authentic the channel is. But anyway, we'll move right along here. This is us looking at the Western Atlantic, mainly towards the Caribbean and the Gulf. We're looking closer to home because that's where I think the greatest threat of storms impacting land will be, are going to be the ones closer to home. Not to mention, most of this area around here has been untampered with. There haven't been too many storms popping up here. So the water is extremely warm. If the wind shear lightens up and we get a tropical system that develops, it could turn into something big very easily, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next month for sure. Because this hurricane season as it stands right now is not going to be very memorable for a lot of people at the current pace it's on, I should say. But it only takes one storm. So do not let your guard down. You're probably thinking right now, I could see it almost in a way. It's like, oh, this hurricane season was supposed to be active. Nothing's happened. Do not, that way of thinking is very dangerous. Because remember, even though this is the peak of hurricane season, it lasts all the way until the end of November. And I've seen some crazy things happen. Go ask anyone that dealt with Hurricane Sandy. They weren't expecting something to happen in October. I can almost assure you that. But enough rambling. This is all I got for you guys as of right now. Stay tuned for the Labor Day holiday forecast, which will be later today, probably more towards the evening and nighttime. But until then, this has been Ty Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys in the next one.